After Nintendo revolutionized the video game industry with the birth of Super Mario 64, 3D gaming became the standard for every home console for years to come. Super Mario World was the last mainline 2D Mario game released on a home console back in 1991. Following that, 1 year later in 1992 marked the end of an era for Nintendo. With the release of Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy, the world would have to wait over a decade for the next 2D installment, as 3D games had completely taken over. And this was to be expected. With the advancement in technology also came new hardware improvements, which finally opened up room to create fully realized and open environments, compared to the linear course clear objectives present in most games up to that point. However, in 2006, Nintendo made one of the best decisions they had ever made, bringing back the days of old for the new and old generations to experience. I say this was such a great decision because to this day, New Super Mario Bros. On the DS is one of the best-selling video games of all time. Clocking in at just over 30 million units sold, it's fair to say this game succeeded in delivering that classic Mario formula that tons of fans grew up playing on their NESs back in the 80s and 90s. In this video, I will analyze what shaped this entry into such a memorable and loved title, and how it was the perfect blend of nostalgia mixed with new and interesting ideas. This is my retrospective of New Super Mario Bros. Let's get right into it. So right off the bat, it is made abundantly clear that this game is extremely faithful to the original Super Mario Bros. Even the layout of the first level bears a striking resemblance to that of World 1-1 from the original game. It's a perfect introduction that eases the player back to the roots of Super Mario, except for one notable addition, that being the Mega Mushroom. So the big thing back in the day promoting the release of New Super Mario Bros. Was this new power-up that transformed Mario into a giant version of himself. It was shown that you would be able to destroy anything in your path, and while all of that is indeed true, it really didn't live up to the hype. The Mega Mushroom is extremely situational, and it rarely even shows up in the game. On top of that, if you're not careful, you can end up destroying critical pipes that lead you to secrets or star coins, which, if you're trying to 100% this game, can be very frustrating at times, considering the fact that you are forced to completely restart the level in order to have a chance at these collectibles again. Aside from that, just like in Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3, there is a world map that serves the function of entering different levels. While I think Mario World did the best job at this concept, Mario Bros. DS offers a completely acceptable version, especially considering the fact that this was meant to be played on the go or in quick increments, so spending lots of time on a world map would be completely unnecessary. The movement in this game was brilliant for its time. Just like the classic games, you can still run and jump obviously, but Nintendo decided to implement some of the attributes from Sunshine and 64 into this. For example, you can now wall jump, triple jump, and ground pound, like you could in the 3D entries. And that's another reason why New Super Mario Bros. Presented itself so flawlessly. For those coming off of 3D titles, they will instantly notice these additions, and on top of that, none of these moves are difficult or overwhelming to learn, so brand new players won't be intimidated by them considering they are so easy to execute and perform. The power-ups also reflect this, most notably seen by how there are literally only 3 new additions, that being the Mega Mushroom, as discussed earlier, the Blue Shell, and the Mini Mushroom. The Mini Mushroom is a power-up, or power down I guess, that nobody seems to like. You are only given 1 hit point with it equipped, and it offers very clunky and imprecise movement. I mean, I guess walking on water is kinda cool? I guess. However, one very cool way it is utilized is how this game goes about unlocking different worlds. For example, to unlock worlds 4 and 7, it is required that you beat previous boss fights with the Mini Mushroom, which can actually prove to be quite a great challenge. Rather than simply jumping on them like before, you must ground pound on their weak spot in order to defeat them. So while I think this power-up is pretty boring in its actual usage, the game itself does it much more justice by giving it meaning and giving the player an incentive to pick it up. As for the Blue Shell, I never understood the hate it gets. I think it's tons of fun to tuck into your shell and fly through these levels at a very fast pace. However, you can't just mindlessly steamroll through every stage without caution. If you're not careful, you will end up bumping into something that sends you flying into the endless abyss below, or some kind of enemy. I think it's a great power-up and a true shame that we'll probably never see it again in a mainline Mario game. Since we're here, I might as well talk about the boss fights themselves. These are single-handedly the best fights in modern 2D Mario, and unlike all the follow-ups to this game, there is no Koopaling in sight. Each and every world has its very own unique and fun interaction with the creative boss battle, and 99% of the time, defeating them involves more than just jumping on their heads 3 times. Sure, you still need to hit them all 3 times, but in totally different ways. For example, the fight against Speedy Piranha requires fast movement to avoid his attacks as he swoops down quickly, and if done successfully, only then can you cause damage by jumping on his belly, just like in Mario Sunshine. Or how wacky this fight with Monty Mole is. He's in a tank, for crying out loud, throwing bombs at Mario like some sort of terrorist. It's hilarious, it's goofy, and above all, it's tons of fun. And that's a concept brought into the actual levels themselves. I feel like this game receives too much flack because its successors forever stained it in its legacy in a cycle of repetitive level design, overused music, and no innovative boss encounters. But none of that is true here. There are concepts seen in New Super Mario Bros. DS that are rarely seen anywhere else in the entire series, and some of these haven't even been seen in general since this game. One moment you'll be spiraling off springs in order to reach higher platforms, avoiding the giant eel from Super Mario 64, or enjoying some other new thing being thrown at you. Each stage and world is thoroughly enjoyable, and even the water stages usually include some sort of cool idea, such as this one here, where there are these giant bubbles that look like they're straight out of Bikini Bottom, and if you swim into them, you're bounced back into a potential threat, such as a blooper or Cheep Cheep. There's also the castle levels, which all feature a fight with Bowser Jr., which get increasingly harder as you progress throughout the game. Eventually, you'll have to throw his own shell back at him in order to knock him down, so you can cause damage. He's not the most amazing fight out there, but I would certainly take these over what we got in the later entries any day of the week. Overall, if you don't enjoy any of these stages, then I definitely do not recommend playing any of the other New Super Mario Bros. Games because as time went on, the level design just became more and more bland with each new entry. The major collectible this time is the star coins, and the way they are utilized here is brilliant. They aren't required for completion or anything like that, but what they are used for is unlocking optional stages on the world map throughout the game, and this gives the player a great incentive to grab them all. There's this major sense of emptiness when you don't unlock these levels, so it gives great reasoning as to why you shouldn't just blast through all these levels without a care in the world, because some of these hold very well hidden star coins that can aid you in your quest to completing the game. And on top of everything else, these extra unlockable stages are usually the most creative and interesting of the bunch. Therefore, if you decide to not collect any star coins, you are potentially skipping out on your favorite level without even knowing it. This is also the only entry in the series where you can use this collectible to open up different areas of the map throughout the game. And no, I'm not counting New Super Mario Bros. Wii, because this concept was only used once, and that was in the post-game to unlock the levels of World 9. The star medals offer a great risk-reward system that anybody can attempt if they are craving more gameplay, or just want to see everything this game has to offer. Another addition that hadn't been seen up until this point are these cannons you see placed within each world. These are essentially the warp whistles from Super Mario Bros. 3, or the keys from Mario World, where in order to gain access to them, you must find a secret exit in one of the levels that takes you to the cannon. Personally, I never like to use these because unless I'm attempting a speedrun on one of these games, I prefer to play through everything the developers intended the players to see. But I won't harp on about this for too long, because at the end of the day, they are completely harmless and just give the player an extra option if they want to play through the game faster. Hey, so remember how great the Toad houses were from New Super Mario Bros. Wii? You know, where you had to match the power-ups in order to claim said power-up to your inventory? And matching 2 Bowser or Bowser Jr. faces ended the minigame? Well, in the first installment, things aren't that great. In fact, the Toad houses are now just bland and uninspired. Literally the only thing you do is walk in, hit a power-up block, and hope you receive a good item from it. There's nothing to this, and calling it a minigame would be an insult to minigames. Again though, it was the first entry of the New Super Mario Bros. Series, so I will have some mercy with it, especially because this is a single-player adventure, unlike Mario Bros. Wii, where playing with a friend greatly enhances the experience, thus increasing the incentive for Nintendo to add an engaging minigame like we saw on the Wii. So at the end of everything, once you finally reach the final world, what are you greeted with? Well, World 8 might just have some of the best level design seen in the game. It seems like literally every level here has its own distinct theme that sets it apart from the others, and apart from that, this world is huge. It features 2 tower levels instead of the usual 1, along with even more levels. And the main attraction here is obviously the final castle within the game. The level design here is not used anywhere else, so it can prove to be quite the challenge, as you find these different buttons that literally flip the stage upside down. So we essentially go from an action platforming game to a puzzle platforming game just like that. Simply flipping the rooms greatly increases the difficulty compared to what you would see in most other Final Castle levels. This mechanic is used as a problem-solving tool and must be utilized correctly, otherwise you'll just end up repeating the same rooms you've already been through numerous times. However, if you manage to overcome that, then it's finally time for the fight with Bowser himself. Or rather Bowser and Bowser Jr. Because that's right, this time, his son fights right beside him, acting much in the same way as he did during all of his other fights. He still throws a shell at you, and the goal is to take him out first, so you can focus solely on Bowser, and once you do, it's honestly extremely underwhelming. Bowser is basically just a slightly upgraded version of his older self from the original Super Mario Bros. He shoots fire into the air and performs his typical attacks, but there really isn't much else to talk about with him. Once he jumps into the air, you simply have to run underneath him and jump on the button, thus defeating him and completing the game. And yeah, that's really it. There isn't some huge dramatic ending like we saw in Mario Bros. Wii, and while it may be boring, it does fit in with the stop-and-go nature of the DS, and it is a pretty faithful recreation of the original fight, and I'm sure people who experienced this back in the day as adults loved it because it reminded them of their childhoods. And there you have it! New Super Mario Bros. Wii was a classic title reimagined for the new generation, and it perfectly satisfied those who had been fans of Mario since their childhood, and wanted to experience that 2D action again, only this time on far greater hardware. Personally, I will likely always view this game as the best of the new Super Mario Bros. Series, due to its innovative level design, creative enemies and bosses, and its overall simplicity. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It knows it's a 2D Mario game, and that's what it provides you with. Just good old-fashioned Mario fun that can be played anywhere, at any time.